Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Janaditadavane Jagamanadova Dakinenitai Chan Vamegadadara Nikate Advaita Srini Vasatratradara Vasiyate Gauracham Ratna Simhasane Harati Gaurena Brahma Adideva bhaje karatala. Madhura vridanga bhaje paramarasala. Sankha bhaje kanta bhaje madur 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 bhaje. Sankha bhaje kanta bhaje madur 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 bhaje. Sankha bhaje kanta bhaje madur 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 bhaje. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Bahu koti chandrajini vadana udvala. Karadeshe banamala Kore jalamala. Shiva Sukha Narada Prene Gada Gada. Bhaktivedanta Gaurara Sampada. Jaya Jaya Gaura Chandra Arati Go Shobha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine.
To samo. Przygotuj się.
Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shishi Gauranitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarashat Shishimat, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarashat Shishimat, His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Gir Govardhan ki, Vrindavan Dham ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Jagannath Kshetra Dham ki, Ganga Mai ki, Yamuna Mai ki, Tulsi Maharani ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki, All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Keshavajita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Shri Nrsimhadev Bhagavan Ki Jai, Prahlad Maharaj Ki ki jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunatiya Vanachari Yamunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Yamunatiya Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So, I would like to thank everybody for this opportunity to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam and all the assembled devotees and devotees assembled on Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Getting ahead of myself. And all the devotees assembled in the temple room and online. I humbly request your blessings that I will try to speak some things which are useful both for yourselves in your devotional lives and for me to try and actually realize some things and not just speculate or have knowledge without any realization. So reading from chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, verse 23. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Verse 23. Saknati haiva yasodam. 23, Prabhu, 5:23. Praksharira vimokshanat kama krodo bhavan vegam sayukta sasuki naraha sagnati haiva yasutam praksharira vimokshanat kama krodo bhavan vegam sayukta sasuki naraha sagnati haiva yasotam praksharira vimokshanat kama krodo bhavan vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Saknati heva yasotam praksharira vimokshanat kama krodho bhivam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Saknati heva yasotam praksharira vimokshanat kama krodho bhavam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Word for word, Shaknoti is able. Iha eva, in the present body. Yaha, one who. Sotam, to tolerate. Prak, before. Sharira, the body. Vimokshanat, giving up. Kama, desire. Krodha, and anger. Udbhavam, generated from. Vegam, urges. Sa, he. Yuktaha, in trance. Saha, he. Sukhi, happy. Naraha, human being. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Purport. If one wants to make steady progress on the path of self-realization, he must try to control the forces of the material senses. There are the forces of talk, forces of anger, forces of mind, forces of the stomach, forces of the genitals, and forces of the tongue. One who is able to control the forces of all these different senses and the mind is called Goswami or Swami. Such Goswamis live strictly controlled lives and forgo altogether the forces of the senses. Material desires, when unsatiated, generate anger, and thus the mind, eyes, and chest become agitated. Therefore, one must practice to control them before one gives up this material body. One who can do this is understood to be self-realized and is thus happy in the state of self-realization. It is the duty of the transcendentalist to try strenuously to control desire and anger. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Ajnanatamrandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Gadamayam Dadanti Swam Badantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Radha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagata Raghunatam Titam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijina Sairak Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Vishakavalam Didam Sam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Brayamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Devacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravadi Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasyacha Desitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for being here. Yes. This verse is very, very interesting because I've noticed in my own life, especially since coming to the temple, when Krishna wants for me to understand something, he repeatedly gives the same message again and again, whether this is through what I'm reading, the classes you attend, the conversations you have with devotees, because I think Krishna knows for things, realizations or things to get into my head, that he has to just constantly give the same message. So for the past while, the same message has just been, it's maybe an obvious point, but I've still not fully accepted it, that there is no enjoyment to be found in this temporary world. And Prabhupada says this so many times. It's basically one of his main points. You could read it in how many different purports. But still, there's a reluctance within me, and I guess other people as well, to fully accept that there's no enjoyment here. Because we have this idea that if we somehow or other try and enjoy the senses in a different way, a different combination, maybe we have we eat dinner at a different time, we go to bed, we just change things slightly, then there will be enjoyment. But really we can't really make any proper spiritual progress until we fully accept that there's no enjoyment. So this message has just been repeatedly, I've just noticed it repeatedly in my own life. So I think I best take notice of it. So then I had to speak on this verse. And again, it's a similar point, just emphasis on us dying, which is probably not the happiest of subject matters, but I think it's an important point that I myself have to come to terms with. So I think I'll speak on this because recently I was reading there's a Bhagavatam second canto. We had a class on it quite recently as well. Second canto, first chapter, I think verse number 4. The purport, it's a long purport, and Prabhupada is just absolutely slamming any, when Prabhupada goes full beast mode. There's nothing getting in his way, and he's absolutely slamming any idea that there's any enjoyment and that the advancement of materialistic society is worthwhile. So there's just one great line. He says, advancement of material society is like the decoration of a dead body. He says, we're all just dead bodies flapping for a couple of days. I love this. We're all dead bodies flapping for a couple of days, and human life, and most people just waste all the energy of human life in decoration of this dead body. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than that. Prabhupada, he's just, and so that's been on my mind for a while. But yeah, so I'll maybe speak a little bit on death, because what's unique about the human form of life is that we know that we're going to die. And most humans, currently we do a good job of just shutting our eyes and pretending it's not going to happen. I think there's some pastime, I don't know where from, Maharaj Yudhisthira states that the most wonderful thing is that even though all our relatives, our ancestors have died, we can see people dying constantly around us. Still everyone thinks that they're going to live forever. But really the spiritualists, if you actually open your eyes and look at the world, you can tell that we're going to die, and we don't know when it will happen. It could happen very soon, but within 50 years or whatnot. It's going to happen. Therefore, what do we do about it? I was listening to a very, very interesting class by Bhaktivedanta Swami. Again, this was not at all to do with death or with material enjoyment. It was completely separate, the title of the class, but he's given the same message, so I've got to pay attention. And he starts talking about why it is that we have to die. And he likens the process of death to the process of sleeping. Because we have to sleep, every day. And there's certain, there's physical processes that happen when we sleep. We digest our food, we grow, we repair our body. But more importantly is the mental processes. So we process all the information that we've received through the day, and we forget really everything, because there's so much information comes into our senses. So during sleep, this is the time when we forget and get rid of most of the information, and we prioritize the important things. So we create structures. So this is, material dreams are also dealing with this. This is a way we organize the information in our heads. So it's an important process, and if we don't sleep, then we go mad. So similarly, death is like sleep, which is really cool, or not cool, I don't know the right adjective, but because this body and this life is really just, a manifestation of karma and desire. People can actually look at one's body and then tell their future, tell their past, tell their desires just from the body. There's certain, skills and sciences that are there because the body is just a manifestation of karma and desire. So at the moment of death, because when we're alive, we have different sorts of karmas. There's manifested karma, which we can see in the body, and maybe you have a certain illness or a certain way of thinking or intellect, or these things are manifested, and there's unmanifested. Prabhupada gives the example of a thief who's committed a crime, and he's not yet been punished. But the punishment is still his, it's just in the future, so it's unmanifested. So similarly, we have manifested and unmanifested, but at the moment of death, then these manifested and unmanifested, all different types of karma, they just come back together, they're no longer separate. And what happens is, like sleep, they get processed and organized. And the important things get put to the forefront. So Bhaktivedanta Swami was giving this analogy of a computer and a hard drive. So the computer is where the things happen, and the hard drive is a memory that gets stored. And what happens over time, that memory will get really cluttered, and you just keep adding things to it, and it's got so much, and there's no structure to it. And then what happens when the computer comes to the time to get, it's too old, it needs to be thrown out, is we take out the hard drive, and we archive everything properly, and we put everything into the correct order, and we delete the old files, and the important files we put to the top. So then we can take this old hard drive and put it into a new computer. And when it's in this new computer, then it's very easy to understand what's what. So similarly, when we die, then, because we've had so many desires and unfulfilled desires are just cluttering up. So we have to die at some point. And when we do die, then these are then organized and systematized, and so in our next life, when we get these karmas become manifest, the important things, the things that are prominent in our lives, such it be our relationships or maybe some physical health thing, or a certain way of thinking, these are prioritized so that it's something that we can work through, and that we then have to, it's an opportunity for us to grow, and it's clear. So it's really, really interesting, because we see that advanced spiritualists, like Prabhupada, they can survive on very, very little sleep. Prabhupada was getting maybe 2-3 hours of sleep, and other people, they can go for less. Now, why is it that they can do it and not go mad? Because if normal people have this little sleep, they go insane. It's because, I'm not sure, someone like an advanced spiritualist, they can perform all the processes that sleep performs normally, but consciously. So they don't need to, shut off their conscious brain and sort out all this information. That's just happening because their consciousness is so large and all-encompassing that this is happening naturally. So they don't need to have this extra amount of sleep. So similarly, the devotee or the pure devotee, he can actually, just as the spiritualist doesn't need to sleep, the pure devotee doesn't really need to die. In fact, Bhaktivedanta Manor gives this very famous class called Die Before Dying. And what does this mean? He says that death is to remove everything that is false and temporary. This is just, it's so clear, and death is to remove everything that is false and temporary. So in this way, once all these things are removed, then there's actually the need to, maybe the physical body will get to a certain age where it has to pass away, but the actual processes of death are not so applicable to a devotee, because all their karmas and all their desires have been made sense of because they're engaged in devotional service. Because, coming back to this verse, it's saying, if one is able to tolerate the urges of material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and happy in this world. Now that seems slightly contradictory to what I was saying at the start. He's well situated and happy in this world. When I was saying, quoting Prabhupada saying there's no happiness in this material world. And he says happiness is like, searching for happiness in the material world is like, seeing the mirage of water in the desert and running after it. But here it's saying that if we tolerate the urges of the senses and check the force of desire and anger, then we can be happy. Which seems slightly contradictory. The way I'm sort of seeing it from, because this verse could refer to impersonalists. This whole chapter, karma yoga, you don't need to be a devotee to check the force of desire and anger. There's other ways of doing it. But for a devotee, which I think is most important, I don't really care about being an impersonalist. Though maybe parts of me do. For a devotee, when they say they die before dying, they get rid of all their material desires. That's what it means. They get rid of all their material desires, and all their karma is burnt off. Then the happiness that they're experiencing is not material happiness. They're engaged in devotional service, and it's pure devotional service. Now Prabhupada, he gives a class on this verse, and he talks about how the yogis, different yogis, how they would achieve this, how they would tolerate the forces of desire and anger. And he talks about they would do extreme penance and austerities. They would, in the winter time, they would go into freezing water and do meditation underwater and things. And then in the summer, in the blazing heat, they would light fires, and then they would just to build up this tolerance so that they won't be swayed by anger or the material senses. But then, of course, Prabhupada says, we can't do that. All we can do is chant Hare Krishna. But by chanting Hare Krishna, he says in this class, is thousands of times the benefit. Thousands of times the benefit compared to these yogis who are practicing severe austerities. Just by chanting Hare Krishna, we can get thousands of times the benefit. Because once we realize, that we're going to die, then we realize the importance of chanting Hare Krishna. Because we can no longer be lazy in our spiritual life. Because it says here, before giving up this present body, now for nearly every single living entity, this giving up of the present body is not voluntary. It is by force. Just because you have a certain amount of time in a particular body, and then Krishna comes in the form of all-devouring time, death personified. Like it's by force. Whereas if, as devotees, we can take to this process of Harinam Sankirtan, by the recommended yagya for this age, then we can actually die before dying. Because we get rid of all these external things so that we're not being taken by force. We are actually, this material body is a slightly irrelevant factor to us. This comes to a point where we're already engaged in the transcendental platform. Now this is quite advanced, but I guess it's inspiring to see. But furthermore, once we realise that we're going to die, and then we also reflect on the fact of how good our opportunity is now. I've heard it. Just reflecting on it, like, so we have a human form of life. That is pretty good. We've taken birth on on the earth, where it says there's a very good amount of suffering and pleasure. Therefore, it's because if there's too much pleasure, like in the heavenly planets, we'll just get completely bewildered by sense enjoyment. Whereas there's too much suffering, like the hellish planets, then there's there's no determination, no even opportunity to engage in devotional service. Whereas here we have the perfect mix of both. But then not only that, Krishna was on the earth 5,000 years ago. That's the grand scale of things. That's fairly recently. But then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the earth 500 years ago. Now, as things go, that's basically yesterday. But then Srila Prabhupada was here, 60, 50 years ago. Like, it's so recent and it's so potent. Sam Prabhu was giving us a class, and he was making a point that we're at the end of the race. Like, for so many millions of lifetimes we've been going up and down the different species of life, and now we've actually realised that we have to inquire about the Absolute, and we've taken to devotional service. And it's such a perfect opportunity that, really, if we just engage in the process, it might not be this lifetime, but soon we're getting to the end, and there's maybe a final push, but it's quite optimistic in a sense. And I've just been trying to fully appreciate the gravity and the immense opportunity of this situation. It's not even conceivable of how, in my own life, that there's, I don't want to know what I did in previous lives. It's a blessing that from Krishna comes forgetfulness. It really is. But somehow or other, I've had the opportunity to come here. But meditating on the fact that, yes, we're going to die. There's not actually any pleasure here in the material world. And we have such a perfect opportunity to engage in devotional service, which is, our constitutional position. This is the purpose of all living entities. And we have this opportunity that we must fully just dive into it And there could be... We can't be holding ourselves back in any way. We can't be thinking, okay, I will do some devotional service. I will engage in this way. But then I'll also make some backup plans for myself. I'll have a nice family, and then I will have a job. I can do devotional service. These things are there. We can engage in our duty, but if we fully grasp the magnitude of the situation, then we've got to dedicate this whole life to Krishna, because we don't know when we're going to die. So we better start practicing and die before dying. And as Prabhupada was saying, the best way to die before dying is to chant the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, why is this the best way to die before dying? Because to chant the Maha Mantra is to say, please Krishna, can I be engaged in your devotional service? Now, to be engaged in devotional service, not only does it purify us, but it's on the transcendental platform, and it burns up all sinful reactions. So Prabhupada said, and Krishna says at the end of the Gita, Sarvadharma Parityajya Mamikam Sharanam Vraja, that just by surrendering unto Him, then we become free from all sinful reactions. And once we're free from all this karma, as it is in the nicest way possible, we're dead in a material sense. We're no longer entrapped in this cycle of birth and death, because birth is just the opposite side of the coin of death. So we just got to fully take to this process of chanting the Lord's holy names. And I think in my own life it's helpful to remind myself of the fact that I don't know when I'm going to die, and there's actually not any enjoyment to be found here. Therefore, I just have to chant Hare Krishna. Jai. Thank you very much for listening. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai. Is there any comments or questions, or corrections, or? Jai. Oh, Jai.
The topics of Kameka Ekadashi are described in the Brahma Bharata Purana in the conversation between Lord Krishna and Maharaj Yudhishthir. Maharaj Yudhishthir said, O Supreme Lord Krishna, I have heard from you the glories of Devyasini Ekadashi. Now I would like to hear about the Ekadashi that occurs during the waning moon in the month of July, August. O Lord, kindly explain its glories. Lord Krishna replied, O King, please attentively hear the description of the sacred vow of Ekadashi, which removes all sins. In ancient time, Narada Muni once asked Lord Brahma about the same topic and inquired about the deity which is to be worshipped on that day and the process one must follow to observe this Ekadashi. Lord Brahma, the spiritual master of the entire universe, replied, the Ekadashi which occurs during the waning moon in the month of July-August is called Kamika Ekadashi. By hearing the glories of this Ekadashi, one obtains results of performing a Vajpaya sacrifice, like Ashwamedh Yagya.
Horse sacrifice.
Ashwamedh, like a horse sacrifice. On this auspicious day, one should worship Lord Vishnu, who holds a conch, disc, club and lotus in his hands. The result one obtains by residing and bathing in holy places like near the Ganges or in Kashi, Namasanya and Pushkar is obtained simply by worshipping Lord Vishnu on that day. The result not even obtainable by taking bath in Kedarnath, Kurukshetra or joining the solar eclipse is easily obtained by worshipping Lord Krishna on this day. Therefore, it is a duty of everyone to strictly observe this Kamika Ekadashi by worshipping Lord Vishnu. Just as the water cannot touch the lotus leaf, similarly, by the influence of this Kamika Ekadashi, a person remains aloof from sin. Anyone who worships Lord Hari with tulsi leaves is freed from all sins. Only by seeing tulsi, one's simple reactions are destroyed. By touching tulsi, one's body becomes purified. By offering prayers to tulsi, one's diseases becomes cured. By bathing tulsi, one does not have to fear from Yamaraj, Lord of Death. By planting tulsi, one obtains fortunate enough to reside with Lord Krishna. And by offering tulsi leaves at the feet of the Supreme Lord, one obtains pure devotional service. Even Chitragupta is unable to estimate the piety of one who offers obeisances and gilam to such a tulsi on the day of Ekadashi. The sin of killing a brahmana or an embryo is destroyed as second result of observing this Kamika Ekadashi. One who hears or reads the glories of this Ekadashi with faith certainly obtains the abode of Lord Vishnu.
That's powerful. I should probably have heard that at the start of the day, not at the end of the day.
So anyway, for a devotee, he doesn't fear death. The devotee is fearless. A devotee is fearless. He doesn't fear death. He steps over death. Devotional service is easy for those who are serious. For those who are not serious, then it's difficult. If you're serious, then it's easy. So, surrender to Krishna is easier than serving any other person. Because by serving any other person, they demand so much from you. And it's not hard to please any other people sometimes. But Krishna is easy to please because he just wants your devotion. So the only thing is you have to be serious about the process. Then everything is easy.
Yes, there's one thing that was I was thinking about over the course of class is that I was just wondering if through other processes can others become fully desireless, or is it only through do they become fully desireless, or is it only through bhakti when one is fully desireless? Yeah, something I was not sure about myself.
Yeah, one could definitely become free from material desires through other processes. Prabhupada gave the example of the yogis who engaging in severe austerities. But actually, it's a very good question, because the nature of the soul is to be active. So for the devotees, it's somewhat, I don't want to use the word easy, but it's definitely easier because we make our desires for Krishna, and then they're on the transcendental platform. Whereas it seems like for the gyanis or the karmis or the mystics or whatnot, who are not worshipping the Supreme, that they can, through austerities and self-control and different sacrifices, that they can tolerate. They can tolerate these things, but to actually to cut out any desire, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think it's possible, because I remember Prabhupada saying that those, the impersonalists who reach the Brahma Jyotir, they fall down again because ultimately they get bored.
Yes.
This is really interesting, because I used to, from quite a young age, my conception of heaven was sort of the impersonal conception, because I could never believe what I was told, because it's just a bit, the sort of the Christian conception is a little bit, well, maybe, it's like a description of the heavenly planets, really, because that's what it is. Well, and I was just thinking, well, you got to do that for eternity. You just got to be with God for eternity and just like do nice things. I was like, that's terrifying. Just eternity. Would you not get bored? And then you read Prabhupada's books, you're like, oh yeah, you would get bored because you're not engaged in devotional service. So, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts, Prabhu?
Some thoughts came to mind is that once one becomes like to the platform of what's called Brahman, or the impersonal Brahman, if they can be completely free from the material aspect, like completely identified with the spiritual, but they still haven't awakened their bhakti, their relationship with Krishna. So they can't actually go to develop Krishna prema all together. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I've also heard that impersonalists have a fear of accepting their own identity as well. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Actually, I have to get some clarification. Yeah.
I really need to stop speculating.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Padre Brew. Thank you for the class.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Padre Brew ki.
Antaram Srila Bhagavad Gita ki.